Hey everyone, Bob Thibodeau here. Welcome to another episode of Ask Bob. Now, I've helped many people over the years, and I've come up or I have been assumed the nickname of the podcast Yoda. What happened is I started off commenting on some Facebook groups and giving podcasting tips, and someone mentioned, say, you're like the Yoda of podcasting, and someone else started calling me the podcast Yoda, and the name has stuck. So in this series of posts, I answer your questions about podcasting. Now, I'll provide insight to some of the more common questions I've received about podcasting as well. And I call this section of our training program, our podcast training program, Ask Bob. So if you have a question on podcasting, then send it my way. I would recommend that you subscribe to this platform, as you'll be updated. By doing that, you'll be updated every time a new question is answered and published. Now, you can ask me a question that you might have concerning podcasting just by going to our website at podcast-training.com. That's podcast-training.com. Just click the contact form at the top, fill out the form, and send it to us. If I use your question in an episode, in a podcast, or in a video, I will give you a shout out for it, and I will also send you a free download of my book, The Complete Guide to Podcasting. This is a $37 value. You're going to receive it for free if you send along your questions, and I use them on the Ask Bob program. If you also have a podcast or a website and you put that information in the contact information as well, I will give your podcast or website a shout out. I'll even put it down in the show notes down below, so that, who knows, you may get some increased traffic from it. So ask Bob whatever question you may have concerning podcasting. Now, we've been covering about the benefits of podcasting. We're starting off this whole series on why you would want to have a podcast. Many people in businesses are wondering if podcasting is something they should be pursuing. They wonder, is it difficult to do? Is it complicated? Is it cost efficient? What am I going to talk about? How do I build an audience? Will anybody listen to me? And these are all very valid questions. They're also questions many people have if they're considering entering podcasting. And so we're going to take a few minutes and answer some of these questions for you. Now, today I'm going to answer the question, is it complicated? Again, no. That's the quick answer. But it can become complicated if you do not pay attention to what it is you're trying to do. And with that in mind, let me just briefly address this topic. First, as I talked about on a prior video, you need a computer. You can use your cell phone, but what is a cell phone? Basically, it's a mobile computer. Okay? It's better than a laptop. You used to have the mainframe computers, and then the desktop computers, and then the laptop computers, now the tablets and cell phones and all that. But you need some sort of computer, be it your cell phone or whatever, and some type of internet connection. You'll need a microphone. The microphone could be your cell phone. The microphone that's on your laptop computer will work as well. And I covered all this in the prior video. So if you did not see my answer to that question, please go back and watch the video. I'll put a link to it right here in the show notes as well. Now, the complication factor comes into play if you try to add too much detail to each step along your production path. This is what you should not do, okay? Especially if you're just starting out. Keep it as simple as possible. For example, once you plan the subject matter that you're going to talk about, have those notes in front of you as you prepare to record. I'm not talking about reading from your notes, but your notes should be used as a prompt to remind you of what it is you needed to say. Once you're ready, hit record and just go for it. Your first dozen or so episodes will sound completely different by the time you hit 50 or 60 episodes. I guarantee it. Especially if you're doing interviews with other people. It'll take that much time for you to find your voice for podcasting. And I can guarantee you, if you publish consistently, when you go back and listen to your first few episodes, you'll wonder why anybody listened. I mean, I'm amazed that when I go back and listen to the first ones when I first started, I say, oh my God, what was I thinking? But over time, you become better at it, just like everything else. But that you should not complicate this procedure, okay? You should not even worry about, at this point, just hit record. And once you're finished, be sure to hit save, okay? That's something that a lot of new podcasters forget to do. I've done it before too. You're in the flow of the conversation, and when you go, oh man, I'm glad it's done, you click off that button. Oh, and I forgot to save it. Don't do that. Hit save, okay? It's a great feature on your recording platform. Now, once your recording is saved, upload it to your hosting platform, and you're basically finished. Now, if you're just setting up your hosting platform, well, that's an entirely different subject matter for a different day. And I'll be going over those steps in a future program as well. But for today, I want you to see it's not difficult to get started. And it really is fairly simple to do. It's not difficult at all to publish a podcast. Now, if you want to add intros and outros and commercials and promos and things like that to your recordings before publishing, yeah, it can get a little bit more complicated, especially when you first start off. But once you know the steps involved to accomplish that, the quality of your product will increase. You'll become more familiar with the process as a whole, and it becomes a whole lot easier. Okay, this will help cut down on the production time. And as I said, it'll be less and less difficult as you move forward. So the overall answer to the question, is it difficult, can be summed up in one statement. It is only as difficult as you want to make it. If you want to keep a simple process, then the process will remain simple. If you want to start adding a few steps to improve the overall quality of the product, it may seem complicated at first, but the more you do it, the more repetitive it becomes, and the easier it will be as the farther along you go. Now, if you find these videos helpful, give me a rating and a comment down below, because that helps others to find this information out as well. And I want to thank you in advance for helping us to get the word out. Over the course of these videos and articles, I want to answer any questions you may have concerning podcasting. You can leave your questions in the comment section below, but a better way of communicating with me and making sure I'm able to see your questions rapidly is by using the contact form on our website. Go to podcast-training.com, click on the contact form at the top, and send us your question. Now, as I said before, if your question is used on the podcast, I will give you credit for bringing it to our attention, and you'll receive a free copy, a free download of my book, The Complete Guide to Podcasting. It's a $37 value, and you'll receive it free of charge just for sending along the questions you have about podcasting and if they're used on the Ask Bob program. If you include your website or podcast information, I'll be referencing that as well and putting your information down in the show notes below. Who knows? You may see some increased traffic to your website by doing this, just from asking me a question. And if I get asked the same question, the first person to ask it will be getting the credit, so you need to ask quick. If you have a question, don't wait. Just right now, today, go to podcast-training.com, fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast in order to be notified when a new episode is available. And in the next episode, I will be covering the question, is podcasting cost efficient? Also, down below in the show notes, you'll find a free download to your free podcast creation checklist. This checklist is the same list I use in my training program. We go into a lot more detail than just a checklist, but you can use that as a guide and follow those steps, and it'll help you begin your publishing career as a podcaster. All right. So come back for the next episode, and we'll talk to you then. In the meantime, go out there and start your podcast.